Bruce McCulloch and Paul Myers first met in the 1980s somewhere along Queen Street in Toronto, Ontario. Bruce McCulloch is originally from Alberta and left that province to help found the influential and fearless five-man comedy troupe, The Kids in the Hall. He has since gone on to become a successful comedic writer, author, musician, performer, and director in his own right. Paul Myers is a musician and author who grew up in Scarborough, outside of Toronto, in a comedy-loving family, which included his famous brother, comedy icon Mike Myers. Paul has written books about musicians like Long John Baldry, Todd Rundgren, Bare Naked Ladies, and now he's written a book about the Kids in the Hall. With full cooperation from the troupe and their collaborators, plus insights from supporters and fans like Lorne Michaels, Seth Meyers, Judd Apatow, Bob Odenkirk, and many others, Myers wrote the authorized biography, The Kids in the Hall, One Dumb Guy, which is out now via House of Anansi Press. To mark the occasion, Bruce and Paul met with me in the atrium at the CBC headquarters in Toronto, where we discussed their long friendship, what propelled the kids into comedy instead of, say, music, surprising aspects of this book, the influence the kids have had on other aspiring comedians, what's next for Paul and Bruce, respectively, and we talked about many other things. With the support of listeners like you who subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly pledges at patreon.com/creative control, plus in-kind support from Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Grandad's Donuts in Hamilton. This is the 439th episode of Creative Control, featuring two hilarious and smart guys, Bruce McCulloch and Paul Myers, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Hi.
Nice to have you on the show. Please introduce yourself,
I'm
sir.
Paul Myers.
Paul, it's nice to meet you finally.
Finally, yes.
I feel like we have a social media connection.
Absolutely. Like so many people in the world.
Yes.
Now you exist in real time.
It's nice to finally meet you and see you in person, and you, sir.
I am Boom Boom Bruce Ian McCulloch.
Oh.
Yes. Also sometimes called Bruce McCulloch, incorrectly. And I'm so happy to be here in the atrium, staring at the portrait of the great Barbara Frum.
Yes, we are at the CBC location today, which is nice of you to make time for me. I do
We can wander
it.
around later looking for the Kids in the Hall picture, but I don't think there is one. I think they keep it in a wing with the Gomeshi one. So we don't see it down here. It's maybe on the 9th floor somewhere.
It's behind the Schitt's Creek one.
Yeah, on the other side. Yeah, like a panel that wasn't as good.
I was fascinated reading your congratulations on your book.
Oh, thank you.
It's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
And I was fascinated to learn that you have a long relationship with the Kids in the Hall,
I would
Paul.
say 30 years counts as a long time.
30 years. So
Yeah.
how did you first encounter the Kids in the Hall?
I knew Kevin and Dave from Second City Workshops, and they said, we're starting this troupe across town at the Rivoli. And at the time, I was dating a girl who was going to York University with Scott Thompson. She was in the film department with Paul Bellini. And she said, oh, my friend's playing the Rivoli too. And it turns out it was the same troupe. So it was just after Scott had joined the Kids in the Hall. So they were playing the Rivoli Club to, 200 people, maybe 100 people. And it was packed most of the time, sometimes not. But they were building a following, and eventually I was there through all of it.
Right.
And then for a few years not.
So you were there as a contemporary, I suppose.
Well, I was a musician on the scene. So I had really got out. I tried improv, and I'm not a comedy performer at all. I like comedy a lot, though, so I'm a comedy nerd.
No, I've worked with him for the last couple of days. He is not a comedian.
That's true.
He's a serious, somber man.
I've had to be around professionals like Bruce and Scott, and you quickly learn you're not funny.
So if you're not, you were interested in comedy if you were
super
attending
interested,
the
yeah.
workshops, right?
Yeah, and it has to be said that my brother Mike was also at Second City at the time, and he loved the Kids in the Hall too, so we would talk a lot about, and we all became friends. And so there was definitely a community around it. Musicians love comedy. Comedy loves musicians. So we were all kind of in the Toronto scene together.
Do you feel like I feel that a lot of comedians want to be musicians and musicians want to be comedians?
That's absolutely true.
Bruce, do you agree?
Well, I certainly don't want to be a musician, although I do have a Beatle bass.
You do and you play well.
Beautiful Hofner.
Do you have a Hofner bass?
Yeah,
I've seen it.
that my daddy gave to me. The only good thing my daddy ever did for me was give me his Hofner bass one time. That should be a piece. I do.
That's absolutely.
But no, I we are also cool because of the Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet who did our music. That's really the only reason we were ever considered cool. But I saw my friends early on moving their Trainer and Garnet amps, and I thought, I'm not fucking doing that.
That's true.
So there's a lot of amazing musicians. I'm certainly not one of them, and I don't really want to be one.
Okay, well, I want to ask Paul about the motivation to write this book in a moment, but Bruce, we should start with you. What motivated you to live a life that would make someone want to write a book about it?
Well, that's a great question, actually. I like in interviews when people say, great question.
Do you think that's sincere? I never know. I get that.
No, it is.
I've seen him. He wouldn't fake that.
I'm obsessed with so many things, and I used to walk around with my little tartan notebooks and write down ideas. I've been obsessed with the world and ideas since I was a small child, and I somehow, luckily, indulged my obsessions and found like-minded people, and I go, 30 Helen standing in a field, that's amazing, that's so funny, that's so funny, that's so funny, I can go to sleep now. And I just luckily found some guys who we could, it was like a warehouse that we could dig away at the warehouse and get our ideas out.
But you were interested in punk rock as a young person.
Oh, without question. And it's like, when people would watch Saturday Night Live, I'd say, you guys are losers. Like, I was never into comedy. I never saw a show. Python was at the corner of my understanding, and it was brilliant. But it was like, I never watched comedy. I never went to movies. I remember people I was working with say, let's go to 2 movies on Sunday. And I'd just go, loser. Let's go see the Modernettes at the Calgarian and get our heads kicked in. That was more fun for me.
Right. Yeah, everyone's kind of a nerd about something. You were more of you were an athlete, I remember that.
Yeah, I was a power lifter. I was an Olympic lifter, and I was a wrestler and a marathon runner. And I was a very angry young man, and I had a very tough, drunk dad, broken home 60s situation. And I think music was my way out of that, and then ultimately comedy, and it just helped me, I think, process my childhood.
Right. Now,
he said it in a lovely voice.
That's it.
Paul, you view this troupe as kind of a punk rock group.
Yeah, I think, and it sort of comes out. They've even said it of themselves in that they do resemble a band. And I've been around bands. Yeah. And I know some of the bands that they worked with, and there's definitely an analogy to rock band, and even in the sense that they were like punks, in the sense like they were like, what do you got? Rebel against whatever you got. And I don't think they ever called themselves rebels. They were always just doing it. Yeah. Which was very band-like to me. Like, as opposed to the Clash, who were very didactic and had a modus operandi. These guys were just like, I don't know, the Buzzcocks? I don't know. Yeah. I can't think of an example. Like making good tunes, really good harmonies, but it's kind of rough and straight ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned that when you would go to see them early on, maybe there's 200 people in the room. Yeah. Maybe there's not. It took a while to build a fan base. Take us back to that time from your perspective, because you've done the research. What was it like when the Kids in the Hall first emerged on Queen Street and were trying to make a name for themselves?
Well, for one thing, there wasn't a lot of sketch troupes that we knew of. I mean, over the time that they were there was Corky and the Juice Pigs and eventually The Vacant Lot a little bit later. But there was like live theater and people doing like slam poetry. They might not have called it slam poetry at the time. And so for them to do comedy, it was kind of novel on the Queen Street scene. And like Second City was where people did sketch comedy. And it was by then kind of an institution. Yeah. And to its detriment in some times, and other times they have great performers bubble up through that. And theater sports was happening, and that was more athletic, I guess. It was more of a competition, but they weren't making scenes.
To Bruce's impulse, really, to compete, to defeat
but they weren't making
opponent.
Scenes. They weren't really making scenes the way you guys were writing sketches, Yeah. And that's what stood out, and that's what made other troupes start to go, oh, we can actually write these down and not just do make-em-ups all night,
Yeah. And you have a bit of, Bruce, as I recall from maybe your Twitter feed, maybe from your one-man show, you have some of it. It's not disdain necessarily for improv, but you have an issue with improv as a form.
I'm
putting words in your mouth. I'm improvising and I'm putting words in your mouth. Yeah.
My joke, I'll tell you from my show, Paul, is, whenever I go to improv and I'm asked for a suggestion and I'm in the audience, I say, don't do any improv.
Right.
And then, of course, they have to say yes, so we don't have to see improv. No, I love improv. I think it can become a lazy art form at a certain point. I think it's great for young people or young artists to find their place on stage and be comfortable. But I think after a couple of years, for me, I think moving on to writing and organizing the stuff is sort of the natural progression.
Yeah, there's a segment in the book where I think it's Mark McKinney is talking about how this is why you're going to be a star. You were the writing workhorse of the troupe. You would sit down and write and organize things more than the other guys.
Oh, yeah, and I actually remember when we were scouted from Saturday Night Live, and I had typed up all my sketches. And Mark hadn't. Mark was sort of my writing partner in many ways, but I typed them up, and it's like, here they are. Okay, I'll just put McKinney on a few of these, and we'll get a job.
Yeah.
I have always been, for whatever reason, a worker, and I've had bad jobs, and I'm a worker.
But is it a mistrust of the moment? Improv to me is in the moment comedy. It's sort of found sound almost. You are more interested in actually writing a narrative.
Well, that's probably interesting, and it's probably what is wrong with me, which is I want to control things, and it's probably the friction I've had in the group is like, no, we got to do it that way, we got to do it quicker, and pick up your cue, and that line isn't working, and so, but that's about me letting go, and probably in my next life, I will let things happen a little bit more easily.
Okay, well, we can look forward to that.
Yeah.
The next chapter of that. So,
Incarnation
Paul,
fans out there.
How did the germ of this book? I mean, obviously you have this long history with these guys.
Sure.
Where did the book idea come from?
Well, I've written 3 other biographies, and they're mostly about music. They're all about music.
Bare Naked Ladies is
Bare
one
Naked
of them?
Ladies,
Yeah.
one about Long John Baldry. It's an interesting story I won't get into. And Todd Rundgren, the producer. And in each one of these cases, I would spend about a year interviewing people, and a lot of people. And I got really, I have to say, good at collating and coming up with what's a narrative, a story. And I knew these guys so well that I almost didn't know if I could write it. But then I realized you can ask them.
Yeah.
Because they're all still alive, thankfully. Thank wood, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Knock thanks. And
Is Kevin technically alive, though?
yeah, he's technically alive. He's dead
Don't
inside.
make fun of Winnipeg. It is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Just because he lives there doesn't mean he's dead.
The last time I saw Kevin, I saw him in the street. I said, "Hello, Kevin," and then he was looking at his phone, and he said, "Hello, Kevin." That was his response to me saying,
sounds
"Hello,
right.
Kevin."
That sounds about right.
And I couldn't do anything. I just was like, "Hey," and he looked up. He's like, "Oh, Vish, yeah, he remembered me from."
You didn't expect that move.
No,
right? Yeah,
hello,
that's
Kevin. Hello, Kevin. I'm
kind of
going
jujitsu.
to try
It's
using
Pretty
that.
good.
Yeah.
Smart. I'm gonna
Is that
start doing
something you've learned how to do as a troupe? Is
no, but I'm going to start doing
that's
it.
pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I learned
Anyway.
a lot about the dynamics of the troupe.
Yeah.
Like Bruce has proclaimed himself the workhorse of the troupe, and it's true. Nothing happens unless Bruce makes it happen.
Yes.
Like Death Comes to Town.
Yeah.
Is like driven by Bruce, and but each guy brings a certain aspect of what you like about the Kids in the Hall. Dave's a very clever guy and he's very conceptual, like from the history of comedy, and he's also fast, right?
Yeah.
He's fast.
Good punch-up guy, right?
And Scott's the best actor, I think. Maybe Mark. They're both the dramatic actors. And Kevin is just Kevin, and we love him, and he's just Kevin.
Yeah.
Like he's like kind
Well,
of
he's
guileless.
the funniest of all of us, without question.
He's also a theoretician too.
Yeah.
Like he also knows everything from Sid Caesar and all that stuff. But Kevin's also like nakedly honest about his passive aggressiveness, which comes out in all the sketches.
Yeah.
So the king of empty
Empty
promises,
Promises.
is
Slipped
him.
my mind, yeah.
It's just him.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times he actually said he'd get back to me for this book, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it slipped my mind." You actually just said that, Kevin. You just said that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of people you spoke to about this book, I mean, it's an amazing array of talented comedic legends and figures.
A lot of people turn up, yeah.
So this aspect of the Kids in the Hall always fascinates me. The fact that for a lot of us, you are the epitome of success in comedy. But as you read narratives about the story, about the troupe, you realize there's a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of struggle to keep it together.
A lot of failure.
A lot of failure.
A lot of pain. He walked around in small circles for like a NASCAR race for 5 minutes after that.
What is
considering his past?
Poetry slam.
Poetry slam
Yeah.
frightens me. What is your perspective on that, Bruce? This notion that you are viewed as, comedy legends. A guy wrote a book about you, for crying out loud. At the same time, as I read about your own perspectives on it, there always feels like we're a cult group. We didn't quite make it. Where does this come from?
Well, I mean, we're workers, and I think every morning you wake up and you don't have anything, and you have to come up with an idea and you do a thing.
Yeah.
And I think, there was never a point where we made it. I mean, maybe for a moment when we did our first tour and tickets were flying out the door, it's like, how many shows do we have to do in Vancouver? What do they want from us? But I think it's always just been, we've worked hard, we're disorganized, we're chaotic, Scott always needs to eat, Dave always needs to leave early. Like, we just somehow just keep working, and I think that's our thing. We never think about ourselves outside ourselves.
Right, but this kind of exercise, I assume, puts you in this reflective mode.
It does, and I don't think 20 years ago I could have been having these conversations about myself. I think only with the vast amount of time that I can now kind of place my career with Kids in the Hall in perspective, and it's like, I'm not just a kid in the hall, and I understand that it is the defining work of my life, but I can only do it now. But of course it doesn't make me comfortable. I haven't read the book. I might read the book. I might not.
You haven't read the book?
No.
It's hard to read about yourself, right?
Yeah, and it's just like
it's too much icky.
I've just never read my press. I've never I'm a punk in that way, and maybe I need to be protected in some way. But I know I'm Bruce from Kids in the Hall, but I'm just Bruce.
No fact checking. You never got a draft of the book to make
I'm
sure.
I got a draft of the book. I just didn't. I knew that other people were doing that.
Would you say you trusted me?
Yes, I trusted Paul.
Okay.
And also Mark was pretty diligent. Mark did like 2.5 pages of like, that didn't happen, that didn't happen.
And Mark said, actually, humorously to me, he said, we have to get this right, it's our legacy. And I remember just laughing my head off.
Yeah.
It's like, we're our legacy. You know what I mean?
But
It's
now
like,
I know their personalities. I know that's so Mark to be that guy.
Yeah.
Mark is the guy who thinks about the proper. I mean, it's his diplomatic upbringing.
Yeah.
And he's very much that guy and very structured about time and all these things. And everyone else you got more of the jazz poet thing, and also you don't want to take on the mantle of who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, so from your perspective, if Bruce hasn't read the book, one of the questions you probably have been asked quite a bit is surprises. When you're doing research on a book like this and you're talking to everyone, can you highlight anything that you were sort of taken aback by?
Oh, well, Scott's story is so filled with actual life and death moments that it's not even like, it's not just comedy failures or setbacks. I mean, he had death and risk of his own death, and he was witnessed a horrible shooting in when he was in high school.
Yeah, in Brampton, yeah.
And I didn't realize the depths of his pain, and it comes out in his work for sure. I also didn't know as much about the Calgary stuff and like just how groundbreaking the troupe that Bruce and Mark were in with Norm Hiscock, who also wrote on the show.
Key figure, yeah.
Just that their legacy of how much they really ran Calgary comedy. You kind of created the Calgary comedy. I mean, Keith Johnstone created the Loose Moose, but they came out of it, and just I knew the Toronto end of it, so I didn't know all the prior stuff.
Yeah,
so that was really
a
great.
big surprise for you.
Yeah, just that it was so destined to be successful because of your energy from Calgary, and then the Toronto guys were just here.
Yeah.
So Bruce, you haven't read the book, but in the bits and pieces that are coming out, as people, I assume other people in the Scott's talking about it, are you learning things? Are you learning things about the troupe?
Probably not about the troupe, but what I like about what has been told to me about the book, which is what I like when I'm a huge fan of the Rolling Stones, and I voraciously, is that the right word?
That's right.
Read books about their inner workings, is there's process and understanding of where we came from to be who we are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people who like the book isn't just like, oh, here's how they came up with Head Crusher. Like, that's interesting, but I think there's more our weird childhoods, how we formed, how it was almost an accident, etc. is what is interesting to me.
Social dynamics.
Yeah.
And to call back to what I was saying about the people that Paul spoke to for this book and their stature. Some of them are, all of them, in fact, are hugely significant in comedy today. Do you have a sense of the influence of your troupe on the next generation of comedians?
Yes, I guess, but if I think about it too much, I'm an asshole.
Yeah, you're not comfortable with that.
I'm not so totally comfortable with it. I think also, we were, and then a cart goes by with the lonely lady who's going home to a bowl of soup later.
She smiled at you.
She did smile at me.
She knew.
Oh yeah, the ladies like.
Love
no,
cart.
I think there was also. We were also a group, but there was also, Brian Hart, Norm Hiscock, and a bunch of other people. We coalesced something that was happening, a suburban thing. I think there was a vacuum for us, but of course we couldn't have done it without all 5 of us at the moment we did. We got lucky. And yes, I guess that thing hadn't been done before, the weird, the power of the suburbs, as it were.
But are you seeing in contemporary comedy, if you see an episode of Key and Peele, or what's the show that just came out that seems a lot like Brain Candy? I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but like, are you starting to see the influence of?
Yes, I've seen it, but also there is a lot of young people, and I do some stuff at Humber. Some of the kids there don't know who I am.
Right.
Some know who I am, but some don't know who I am.
Right.
So I think if we hadn't done it, someone else might yes, it's influence, but what we're doing is kind of obvious in a way. We're processing a kind of a weird, culture that exists. It exists in music, be it the Replacements or whoever. That it's commenting on the world that exists, and we did it. Someone else could have done it, and they do it still.
Paul, would you agree that what the Kids in the Hall have done or did in the original run of their show was really timeless? Like, I can't think of...
I was just saying this to someone earlier today, that they didn't put topical references in. There's no Jean Chrétien jokes. There's no whoever else was... they didn't do Reagan bits. And so...
Very few impressions at all, in fact.
And we don't even do anything about OCAP, which was a terrible statement on the Canadian.
You did do that Meech Lake Accord thing. That was like a big... we're cutting Meech tonight. I remember that. You said that. But that's the point I'm making, is that they didn't tie it to one thing. And a lot of those themes of the suburbs and a lot of those themes of family dynamics, there's always going to be drunk dads.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that guy at the bar fight who goes back for more even though he should stay down. In fact, that was nearly the name of the book, was Stay Down, because like all the beatings you guys were taking.
That's good too.
Yeah, it was we kicked around a few. But I think that makes it timeless. By not making it specific to any time, you almost...
it's a remarkable thing. Like, I was rewatching the first couple of seasons, and I was just like, this just holds up.
There's still millionaires in garbage cans. I mean, it's still going to happen.
There's still 30 Helens standing in a field.
I mean, I think that is a real testament to your legacy, frankly, that you had the foresight to not pin yourself to the time.
Well, it wasn't foresight. It was just what we did. Like, I think we only wrote anything that interested us, and we weren't going to do...
That's what people do, right? That the Beatles did that. They wrote songs that they just wanted. They didn't say, we're going to try and appropriate American black music and turn it into this Liverpool thing that has a lilt. They just had a lilt, and they tried to do the songs they liked. And they happened to be part of a Liverpool scene, and then they went to Hamburg, and that's how they did it.
So you guys, what Paul is saying is the Kids in the Hall were basically the
really
Beatles.
What I'm saying. It helps me sell books.
I think we are more like Husker Du. More like Husker Du.
That's true. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Or the Replacements.
That probably the Replacements, because they probably didn't get very successful either.
Well, they have that thing where they're hugely influential to a cohort of people.
Yeah, Westerberg and Bob Mould are great writers, so that you have a sense that they are... the writings...
but those were terribly car crash bands, and I think we were actually much more functional, even in our dysfunction.
Yeah, that's right. You had the Cold War kids, as you called it, and that's a period that is worth reading about as well.
Yeah, the Cold War. Yeah.
So what do you hope people ultimately take away from this book and this experience of reflecting upon the Kids in the Hall?
He did it for the dough. He did it for the dough. He did it for the dough. There's no dough.
Well, this is a labor of love for you.
It's a complete labor of love. Believe me, you really don't write books for 2 years if you're thinking about getting rich. Unless you write like a book about teen wolves, Harry Potter and the Kids in the Hall would have been good.
That would have been good.
But I'll tell you that what I hope people go. They're fans of like comedy, like Python and all that. If they want to find out where that chunk of history is, if I can help sort of show people one more part of the big puzzle of the thing I love, which is the timelessness of comedy. It's been like a huge nerd pursuit of mine. So if I can tell their story, hopefully to a way that does them justice, and that's why I really wanted it to be authorized, because I wanted it to be as close to the truth as a third party can do. Yeah, and I think that's probably true. I think that's what I got.
Yeah, because there's been at least one other book that came out in recent years. That was not authored. Are you familiar with it? I believe you cite Semley's book. Yeah.
No, I saw it.
Have you read that book?
I did, actually. Once I wrote, I had to finish mine first. I felt like I had to get so when I was on my second draft,
first,
and then I said to someone, I said to someone in Toronto, can you send me that other book? I just want to see if they covered some of the areas. And there was a few things where I noticed a few trunk pieces that stock answers, so I changed my book so that it wouldn't have the exact same answers.
Yeah,
because I didn't want to be the second, but we could at least be maybe the better one.
Right.
I don't know.
But I mean, at least two books about something you did. Right. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, of course.
2 books.
Yeah.
And Ken Burns is doing the series, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's good.
And 19-part series, yeah.
You've read Cliff Nesteroff's The Comedians?
Oh, yeah, I love Cliff. Cliff's in our book, actually.
That's right, he is. And this seems like have you read that book?
No, I have not.
You're not interested in comedy?
No, I watch House Hunters International. Is that a book?
So it's my next book.
I think of this book as like a part of a new compendium of comedy history. and
Oh,
analysis.
you're making Paul so happy.
Oh,
he's
compendium.
purring
My
like a
mom,
little
my
cat-
late mother would
cat.
love that you use compendium.
Yeah, I tried to use compendium whenever
No, but
I
yeah,
can.
no, it's true.
Quit bringing up your dead family. My God, Paul, you're
I'm
dark.
obsessed. She only died last year. Come on, man. Give me.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. She was great. She lived to 92.
He pillowed her.
We've heard.
Pillow.
You mentioned your brother who is in the news because he's a famed serial killer, and his movie is.
That's
is
right.
back.
That's right.
Mike
Every
Myers.
Halloween,
Every Halloween.
the name Michael Myers gets put back in the media.
But really now there's a film. There's an actual new
No.
movie. Yeah, there's a new Halloween.
Holy cow!
Jamie Lee Curtis is like hunting her son.
He plays Michael. She plays Michael
No,
Myers.
she plays the mom from.
Oh
the
my God,
original.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I live
Anyway,
in the States. We don't get that stuff.
we know a lot about your family, I think, from your brother.
Well, and it's inescapable that the other reason I wrote this was because I was through that. I've been around the Lorne Michaels machine a few times from both of these troops, and I felt kind of like there's all this insider knowledge and just or witnessing that needed to be put into something, and it ends up being slightly autobiographical for me, even though I'm not a character in the story.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a sense of me paying homage to that, and my dad, my late dad. Okay, Bruce, and my late dad who watched Python, who would be super thrilled to have heard what happened next.
Right. He was your gateway to comedy.
He totally was.
Yeah. Well, and so Bruce, I must ask you. I mean, what does this foretell anything about Kids in the Hall plans? This book coming out.
Yeah, we're going to do something. We're not sure yet. If you read the book and that we're one dumb guy, we're a disorganized machine, and I think we're just dusting it off now, and we're going to do something.
But my understanding from what Paul just said is you're the center of the dusty machine. What did I say that?
Well,
right?
I'm the guy who sends the first email and harasses people, so I guess it's getting time for me to do that.
So
again.
Something coming? Is something churning?
Oh, something's going to happen.
Because Kevin, when he was on this show, said, "Oh yeah, we might try to do a Netflix thing. The way,
Yeah, we might.
Is that still?
I would love
something?
that.
We might.
But then in your book, as I recall, Mark's like, Mark McKinney, I don't want to.
Mark's always been that way. I said,
Dissenter.
Yeah, we're going to New York tomorrow because we're on Saturday Night Live. We don't have our immigration. No, we're going tomorrow. We're moving to Toronto. No, can't we go to Vancouver? No, we're moving to Toronto.
Yeah, not organized.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, Bruce, I don't know if you know this. I got to see your one-man show in Toronto. Loved it. It was
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, and I'm happy that you're doing stuff like that. What are you up to these days beyond potential Kids in the Hall plan?
I actually just moved to town with my family.
You're back in Canada.
Yeah,
you
so
said you were going to do that
and
in
we
your
did
one-man
it.
show. Wow.
Yeah, and I never lie on stage, just in life. And I'm doing a bunch of television and a bunch of things, and here I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And Paul, what about you? What's coming up?
I'm actually trying to get another book done right now. I'd rather not talk about it until I get the deal because it's embarrassing when they don't happen. And I'm also doing an anthology of power pop stories, literary stories about the musical genre power pop by people like Michael Chabon, writes about Big Star.
Yeah.
And we're basically at the point now where we're going through a bunch of different authors to try. And it's one of those things where it'll be like a lot of sort of deep reading about a subject that people might not think is that interesting.
Oh, cool.
But it super is. It's going to be fun. It's more of an anthology. But I got a couple of things.
You're
going.
editing this.
Well, I'm going to be compiling it, curating it and doing some editing and writing for it as well.
Okay.
It'll be little-known bands like the Rosellos.
The Rosellos are in there for sure. Tommy Keene,
Right.
Badfinger, Big Star, Matthew Sweet.
My God, Badfinger is an underrated band. Oh my God.
Oh my God, and that's
Yeah,
that's kind of
it's all
my
that.
my book's going to be called "Go All the Way: The Case for Power Pop" and
Right.
the Raspberries and everybody. It's going to be fun.
And you guys are big Matthew Sweet. I feel like
I am.
Matthew Sweet comes up a lot in the Kids in the Hall universe, in the book even.
Yeah, no, we sort of met him, and he saw his shows, and we love his music.
The Girlfriend album was happening around the same time as you guys were coming up.
Yeah.
So where can people go to learn more about you and your book, Paul?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Pull My Ears, PULMYERS. It's an anagram.
Pull My Ears.
It's an anagram of Paul Myers.
Yeah, no, I follow you.
And-
I knew that.
But it's an anagram that has one L, so I always have to spell it out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best source for Paul Myers information.
Okay. And Bruce, where should people
for me,
go?
we should go to your library. Just go to the library.
Go to the
and
local
on the
library?
microfiche, look me up.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Thank you
now,
so much.
I know I probably can get this done because I'm friendly with the band. If we went out on a song by Shadowy Men on a shadowy planet, would that
Yes,
suit you?
I'll authorize that.
Now,
Yeah.
Do you want to pick one of the songs? Should we pick the biggest song? What do you think, Bruce?
No, we should pick
Zombie Compromise?
Zombie Compromise. That is the great.
Why did that come to mind?
Well, that was the one that was almost our theme. So, ladies and gentlemen, Zombie Compromise.
Bruce, Paul, thank you so much for this time and being on this show,
Thank
and
you,
best of luck with everything.
Check it out.
Very special thanks to Paul Myers and Bruce McCulloch, not only for tolerating me and my head cold, and also for my tardiness, tolerating my tardiness as I commuted from Guelph to Toronto to meet with them, but for also for being on this, the 439th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available on all iOS and Android platforms, and also on things like Spotify and YouTube and Audio Boom. If you can't find an episode you're looking for, or if you wish to learn more about me and sign up for my regularly scheduled newsletter, please visit my site, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at vishcreative or at vishkhanna. You can also listen to a radio show version of Creative Control on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time around the world at cfru.ca, or on an actual radio at 93.3 FM if you're in or near Guelph. Thanks again to everyone who pledges to our Patreon account, Patreon page, I suppose, patreon.com/Creative Control. Everyone who has pledged so far has made a flexible monthly donation in support of the show, and that it can be $1, it can be $5, it can be $35 a month, and you can always change it whenever you like. We appreciate, we meaning me and I guess my family, appreciate you supporting the show in this way. So again, visit patreon.com/Creative Control to support the show financially. Thanks again to the likes of Pizza Trokadero, The Bookshelf, Planet Bean Coffee, and Grandad's Donuts for their in-kind support for this show. And thanks to my friend, my dear friend Jim Guthrie. He lets me use a song of his, The Rest Is Yet to Come, to close out the show each week. Learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast and subscribing to it, and telling your friends to do the same, talking about the show. That helps. I really appreciate that. And thanks to Paul Myers and Bruce McCulloch for making time for me and for being very kind afterwards about our chat. They seem to have a good time, and I continue to have good times with people, so I will try to keep that up. I gotta go and get healthy, because if you listen to the show regularly, I don't sound like myself, but I'll be back to full capacity hopefully soon. I will talk to you soon, in fact. Bye for now.